Welcome to the Take Your Apprenticeship podcast. The Take Your Place team is made up of 5 universities and 9 further education colleges from across the east of England. We are an impartial project dedicated to giving you the information you need, regardless of where you are applying to study. Since 2017, we have worked with over 30,000 students from 100 different schools, colleges and sixth forms, helping them to explore their options and discover their potential. Now we hope to help you too. In this podcast series, we will explore all aspects of finding, applying for and succeeding in an apprenticeship. Through talking to experts and current apprentices from a variety of industries, we will help you explore your future apprenticeship options.
My name is Kit Rackley and my pronouns are they, them, and I am a NICO Higher Education and Apprenticeship Champion for Take Your Place. This podcast episode marks the start of a series about the green sector. Today, we'll be talking to Anna West of the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education. We'll talk about who the Institute is, why they felt the need to set up a Green Advisory Board, how do we know that the green economy is the future, and why young people should take comfort in the future of the job market despite the current pandemic. Enjoy the listen. I am absolutely delighted today to be joined by a very special guest. Hello, Anna. Please do introduce yourselves and the role that you do.
Hi, everyone. I'm Anna West. I am the Deputy Director for Apprenticeship Approvals and Funding at the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education, and I'm also leading the Institute's project on environment and sustainability.
That's fantastic. And that is the topic close to my heart. So to disclose everybody, I am going to be a bit biased during this podcast. So I should be impartial as someone who works for NICO, but I have an environmental science background. And as an ex-geography teacher, I am so looking forward to this discussion because I know, but you're going to tell us a bit later about why the topic of discussion is so important and why young people really should be looking into a career in the green sector and in the energy sector and all those kind of myriad of things that connect to it as well. So for the people who don't know, can you just tell us what the Institute for Apprenticeships and Technical Education is? Just give us a very quick synopsis of what it actually is.
Absolutely. So we are an arm's length body of the Government Department for Education. We were set up about 4 years ago specifically to develop new apprenticeships. Since then, we've grown and we now also develop T-levels, which are the new technical equivalent to A-levels, and a range of other different types of technical qualifications. So we work really closely with employers to understand what they need from technical education and how we can develop qualifications that help them develop their workforces.
Awesome. I went to a conference a few weeks ago, and one of the most interesting parts of that conference was a colleague of yours was talking and said that they are going to be moving forward and they're setting up what's called a Green Advisory Board. And that really did excite me for so many reasons as someone who wants to promote apprenticeships and someone who has a very massive passion in the environment. So why did the organisation want to set up a Green Advisory Board?
Yeah, so we have about 600 apprenticeships on offer at the moment across a range of different sectors, lots of different types of opportunities, different levels, different areas where people could get some training. What we thought we were missing was a sort of cross-cutting look at whether the apprenticeship offer that we have at the moment is helping to meet the needs of the future green economy, whether there is enough opportunity available for young people or people who are transitioning at a different point in their career to take on jobs which will be part of the sort of green economy of the future, which will help the UK meet its carbon targets, which will let people engage with, the sort of environmental opportunities which are coming. So we thought that what we needed to do was bring together a group of experts, our new Green Apprenticeship Advisory Panel, to have a look at the apprenticeships we have on offer at the moment and see if there's any gaps, there's any obvious places where we haven't got an apprenticeship in place which would help support those future green economy needs, or whether we need to change any of our existing apprenticeships to make sure that they're more equipped so that anyone entering those apprenticeships now will be able to will learn the skills of the future and be able to do those job roles in the future. So we're really excited about it as well. We've got a fantastic panel on board and we've already had the first couple of meetings. And there's so much energy around the subject because, as you know, this year we've got COP26 coming up. There's a lot of energy around it, lots of announcements. So I think it's a good time to be doing it. And I think we've got the right people to do it with us. So we're really excited too.
It is really, really exciting. And you mentioned that you've got a panel of experts. So our young people might not know some of the names or anything, but is there any one or two people on the advisory board who, in the industry anyway, who's got a bit of a star power or is a bit of a well-known voice?
Yeah, I mean, obviously being biased, I think everyone on the board is fantastic.
Of course.
So the chair of our panel, we're really excited to have brought in Judy Ling Wong, who is the president of the Black Environment Network.
Nice.
Which works across the whole sort of space and has a lot of involvement with young people and communities in particular. We also have representatives from the Society for the Environment, so the chief executive of the Society for the Environment is on the panel, and we have representatives from some sort of organisations that I'm sure will be familiar to everyone, like the Forestry Commission, the Environment Agency, as well as kind of specialist consultants and people working in professions which will be particularly affected, like engineering, plumbing, electricity, things like that. So I think there's quite a good spread.
Now, I'm actually going to skip to a question I was going to ask you a bit later, because I don't want any young person to switch off now and think, oh, this is not for me, because I'm not doing GCSE geography, or I'm not doing, A-level geography and environmental science. You're saying things like Forestry Commission, Environment Agency and all that, which are fantastic. And those get mentioned all the time in the geography syllabus. I know that. So I don't want any young person here to say, well, this is not for me because I'm not geography and this is all geography, isn't it? Is that true? Do students have to have good qualifications in geography or even science to do these apprenticeships?
Not at all. There's such a range of different occupations, different jobs that people could go into through these apprenticeships, and the future requirement for jobs in the environmental space is absolutely massive. I mean, there are some where a science background would be very useful. There are some sort of higher level apprenticeships. For example, we've got a chartered environmental manager apprenticeship, but there are also apprenticeships from sort of GCSE level upwards. The things that we will need in the future range from people who will be able to install smart meters, people who will be able to be involved in the recycling industry. There's a huge problem in the building sector at the moment. Lots of domestic houses have old-fashioned heating systems. They all need to be upgraded. There's lots of things that need to be done in the energy space. We're still quite reliant on gas. We need to change all that. But, there's so many different types of opportunities that basically anyone with any background would be able to find something to do in this space.
I can give a perfect example of that in my personal circumstance. So I have solar panels on my roof. I drive an electric car, and I am going to get a smart meter installed in my house soon, because I cannot have a brand new tariff for my electric car unless I have a smart meter installed. So if I'm thinking about all the people involved in my entire home system, so installing the smart meter, so that's the engineer, any electricians that may need to move any bits and bobs around in order to install the smart meter, the people who installed my solar panels, the mechanics that need to work on my car. And I just, and all of this feeds into the green infrastructure. My ex-geography colleagues are going to hate me for this, but you don't have to do GCSE geography, A-level geography, or those kind of sub to access these things, because there are other routes around to it. It just so happens you are doing some geography, even if you don't know it. But that's very reassuring to hear, because I know that it's not everybody's subject at school, shall we say, even though it's a very interdisciplinary topic.
Yeah.
With that in mind then, so I just want to go back to the preface, so to speak. So how do we actually know that the green economy is the future? What's the evidence that that's the case?
I mean, from a government perspective, we've set some climate goals. By 2050, we're expecting that all industries will be net zero carbon. That requires an absolutely enormous shift for a number of industries. I mean, you mentioned electric cars. Take the car industry, for example. That most cars on the roads at the moment are powered by diesel, they're powered by petrol, they use fossil fuels. In order to achieve a transition to net zero for the car market, by 2030, almost all cars on the road will have to be electric or zero emission. You can imagine the amount of skills change that you'll need to see to enable that. You need all the engineers who build the cars to have slightly different skills. You need all the people who design the cars to have slightly different skills. You need to think about the way they're powered. So there's an enormous transition that needs to take place. And the economy isn't currently completely equipped to help people develop the skills they will need to make that transition. So we think apprenticeships is a huge part of that, because apprenticeships are a great opportunity for people to either come in straight from school or from college or wherever they want to come in from and go into a new profession and learn the skills on the job. Or, if people have already been working and they want to do, to try a different type of career, they can use an apprenticeship to enable that career change. So, they provide fantastic opportunity. The car industry is just one example, but this transition will have to happen across all sectors. It's not a nice to have, it's essential. We have to make this happen. It does, obviously some industries are particularly affected, but it does affect all industries. It affects the way that people think, the way that their purchasing strategies, the way that they use materials. In order to reduce our impact on the climate, we really have to change the way that we think and work.
And it's also quite economically and consumer driven now for young people who are not quite sure what they are. So economically, that's how how the money works around our country and around our system. And consumer, you probably have heard of that before, which is like when we go to shops and we buy things, and you might have heard of consumer choice or consumer power. That's the people who buy things like determine what gets sold, the supply and demands. And two things that come into my mind there is, well, one is renewable energy. The fact is, just by sheer economics, it's cheaper to produce a unit of wind power and a unit of solar power, particularly onshore wind, than it is to a unit of fossil fuels now. So naturally, economically, there is a demand for people to work in the renewable energy sector, just naturally, regardless of the climate change argument. And then in terms of consumer attitudes, there is a massive, massive demand now for more ethically sourced goods, particularly ones which use the circular economy, so more local produce and things which feed back into the local community, which of course is low carbon because it's local. So it's all being fed by us as well as the consumers. So listener, young person and your parents, mum, dad, teacher, whoever's listening, we are driving this change. You are actually fueling the jobs of the future, the apprenticeships of the future. Anna and I can run off so many facts and figures to you, but trust me, it's unstoppable, what's happening. And I want to sound positive. You can tell I'm excited by this in my voice.
Yeah, so am I.
We'd like to take a break just to ask you to help us with some feedback. We aim to raise higher education aspirations in as many young people as possible, so your feedback will be welcome. To do this, at your own convenience, please visit tinyurl.com/tyapod. If you missed that, not to worry, you can find the link in the description. Thank you. Now back to the podcast.
To sound positive about this because so many young people out there are feeling very uncertain about their future. Especially right now we're recording this and we're only just coming out of the third lockdown of coronavirus, and so there's obviously been a lot of pressure with schooling and people's future and things like that. However, I think the silver lining with something like coronavirus has that it's accelerated what we call mega trends, which is like the big things which we've already talked about, which are changing the entire nation's way of working and thinking. So that's digital working, like we're talking, and we're recording this over online, but virtually. So we're not sitting in a room together with one microphone. But that's going to be here to stay. This whole digital remote working or blended working is going to be here to stay. And obviously we've just talked about the green sector, the green economy, and sustainable working. And we made a mention of the circular economy. So these three things are here to stay. Coronavirus has been a catalyst for this. So this is positive. Why do you think, Anna, from your perspective, that young people should take comfort in this rapid change we're seeing now?
Yeah, the coronavirus, the pandemic, the huge shift in the ways of working has triggered employers to think about what they need to do in the future. And one of the things they need to do is make sure they have the skills that they will need and the roles that they will need to operate in a future world. From a green economy perspective, there's huge skills gaps. We don't have the skills that we need yet to do some of the things that we will need to do in the future. We don't have the skills pipeline to make sure that all cars can become zero emission in 2030. So a huge amount of different new jobs are coming online. And I think, it's probably worth saying that we've heard directly from our apprentice panel. We have a panel of apprentices here at the Institute who represent some of the different sectors. What they hear from their fellow apprentices is that, it's becoming more and more important for people who are taking on new jobs to feel like they're making a contribution to the world, to feel like they're making an ethical contribution, that they're involved in something bigger than themselves. And the kind of jobs that are coming online at the moment as a result of these sort of mega trend changes, as you mentioned, are all those sort of jobs. They're the kind of jobs that will really help make that difference, make that transition, build this future system that we all want to see, which will support a green economy. So I think, yes, it's a really difficult time. Yes, right now it might seem like, a particularly challenging time to be entering the workplace. But employers are, planning for this change now, and the opportunities are starting to come up. And apprenticeships are always a fantastic opportunity to get into new professions. They've been available throughout the pandemic, which is, saying something. Yep. Employers have really sort of put a lot of investment into apprenticeships even through the pandemic. So they do provide a really good path into some of these future sustainable careers.
Yeah, and people who regularly listen to this podcast know that it's such a diverse way of getting into the world of work. There's so many levels available, so many industries that they can go into with apprenticeships. What I really think that young people should take a lot of heart in as well, which is something I've always subscribed to, is that young voices, youth voices. The fact that you just said you have apprentices, they have a voice in this panel, which is fantastic. So any student listening to this knows that they've got a school council or something like that. If they're level 3 students, 17, 18-year-olds, their voice is going to matter in this whole system that you're doing, because you're having apprentices who are feeding into this advisory board. And I just think that that's an even better way of saying you can be hopeful because your voice is being heard in this. So I'm really, really pleased to hear that. So thank you for sharing that. So let's talk about the kind of apprenticeships that are out there. So what kind of examples of those apprenticeship jobs are there? And can you name a few employers?
Sure. We're just sort of working through, as I said, the list of apprenticeships at the moment to see which ones we think are already appropriate in their current form as green apprenticeships, which ones need some change, which additional ones we need. But to name check some which we're already quite excited about on the green front, we have, I'll just cut across a few different types here. We have a level 2, which is a sort of GCSE equivalent dual fuel smart meter installer. So as it would appear from the description, they would be responsible for sort of developing some insight about the nature of the need around smart meters, what they do, how they're helpful, selling them. They would install them. They would work with other electricians to make sure they work with other systems. Quite a physical role, but also it's really important because we have goals for how many smart meters are needed, of course. Yeah. And that kind of role is available from such a range of employers. Right from the massive ones like Amy and British Gas, right down to small employers, one-to-one, one-man band type employers. So enormous amount of opportunity in that sort of space. At the other extreme, a chartered environmental practitioner degree, so that's level 6. So that is much more on the kind of cross-cutting end of the scale. It's quite broad, it's growing. It would look at things like conservation, waste management, pollution prevention. It would be employed across all types of sectors, like the public sector, universities, private sector. And the kind of employers would be anything from sort of massive building companies like Mark McDonald to sort of big food companies like Jacobs through to the Environment Agency. So, loads of types of organisations are recognising the need for that kind of cross-cutting role. So, I could give you about 1,000 examples, but the sort of that was just to illustrate the kind of range of opportunities that are available. It's really, really important that we get people into the industries which need to change. So the kind of, the smart meters, the car industries, the electricians, the engineers, and that we have people who have that sort of broad skill set that can look across the various sectors to see what's needed. So we have all types of roles available, basically.
That's amazing. Yeah, and it actually brings back a memory. I can't remember what episode number it is. I think it's episode 21, but we interviewed a wind turbine technician apprentice for Siemens Gamesa, and he was absolutely fantastic. And he talked about the kind of things that he got up to. I think it's level 4, I think he was doing, and he can progress into a degree, I think. Here, because we're based in East Anglia, so that's off the North Sea coast. So with, as you know, there's loads and loads of wind turbines out there. And yeah, so that's just one example. And you've just given 2 there right from the level 2. And that's important, everybody. Do listen to previous podcast episodes because they do explain the level system and how that works. But yeah, so as Anna just said, so level 2 is like the equivalent of a GCSE. Now, if you're doing level 3s, it doesn't mean you can't do a level 2. In fact, a lot of level 2 apprenticeships do actually allow you to progress into level 4 or higher. And sometimes it's a good way of testing the water. So don't ignore those level 2 apprenticeships and necessarily restrict yourself to always go for the level 4s or 6s. But a level 6 is a university degree technically because it's the equivalent of an undergrad, isn't it? And level 7 is the equivalent of a master's. So there you go. We've got a range of things there. Wow, amazing. Right. So Anna, I could talk to you all day, but we do have to wrap it up. So I'd like you to tell all the young people listening out there, what would be your final top tips, if you could say anything, any words of wisdom for them?
I would say that it's an exciting time to be in the workforce. it might seem difficult right now, but it's a really exciting time. There's lots of variety of options coming up, and it feels like we're at the beginning of a big change. It feels like there's lots of different ways to get involved. So I would definitely recommend having a look at the different types of opportunities that there are out there, either through apprenticeships or other methods to get into this environmental space. And as Kit said earlier, to bring your voice into it, because it's so important that we hear from young people, people at the beginning of their career, and that influences the way that the careers develop. Because when we meet our 2050 commitments, you'll be the people in the driving seats. So we need your views in right from the start. So looking forward to hearing what you have to say.
Anna, thank you so much for joining me. I've really enjoyed our chat, and as I've said, I can most certainly talk a lot longer with you on this. But maybe we'll revisit in the future and see how things are progressing. Maybe
Absolutely.
That'd be amazing.
Thank you so much for inviting me.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening, and don't forget to subscribe to our future podcasts at soundcloud.com/takeyourplace or on your favourite podcasting app. You can also find us on Instagram, where we are at takeyourplace_HE, on Twitter at takeyourplaceHE, and on Facebook at facebook.com/takeyourplaceHE. You can also email us with any questions, requests, or just to let us know what you think on info@takeyourplace.ac.uk.
We very much welcome your feedback on this podcast episode. This will also help us to raise higher education aspirations in as many young people as possible. To do this, please visit tinyurl.com/TYA pod. That's tinyurl.com/TYA pod. You can find the link also in the description.